I'd like to introduce Mayor Ed Lee.
I want to thank all of you for being here and helping us celebrate and honor our men and women in our military. More importantly, and more so this year than any other, the association has been very successful in getting so many of volunteers from the community and from the various corporations to also join in and make this celebration even more successful. Charlotte Schultz is going to help me make a presentation. I want to make a special note that his leadership has been very key to this, his vision, his partnership with us. And I want to join with you in honoring and in our appreciation and in my authority to declare on behalf of the City, County, San Francisco, this today is Major General James Michael Myatt Day in San Francisco.
And he has commanded, he's flown in combat many times, commanded in combat. So he's come from the bottom up in the Navy and now is in command of the 3rd Fleet. He has accumulated over 3,500 flight hours. Now that's more than 3 Secretaries of State put together. And furthermore, he was flying the plane. So Admiral, welcome. We're delighted to have you here, and we look forward to your remarks.
It's a real pleasure for me to be here to bring 3rd Fleet Forces back to San Francisco again. It is, as mentioned earlier, our 30th anniversary, and we will continue to build upon the partnerships and relationships that really the Fleet Week is all about. So many thanks to Major General Myatt and the entire Fleet Week committee for putting together this exceptional week of activities, and certainly the senior leadership seminar that we conducted over the last 2 days. The San Francisco Bay Area and the Naval Services, which include not only the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, but we include as our naval service brethren the United States Coast Guard. But we all share a rich and storied history of partnership and reliance in times of need. While the Navy presence is not what it was at one point in time, we are family. And like family, we will only stay 3 or 4 days, and then we will leave before the laundry starts to smell. Now, in all seriousness, we will come when needed. All of us, from the federal to the state level and down to the neighborhoods, have learned some vitally important lessons the last couple of days that will hopefully mitigate the effects from any future natural disaster and speed the recovery of the cities and the people therein. It's imperative that we get this right. People's lives may literally be affected by how well and fast we can come together in a crisis. I mentioned up front, this Fleet Week is about partnerships and relationships. I considered yesterday's SLS and today all about developing partnerships and relationships. I spent this morning over on Treasure Island, which had some significance to me. My father trained in the United States Navy during World War II and deployed from Treasure Island on his way to Guam. I will tell you, Treasure Island has changed from when he was here. But he had pictures, I recall growing up, seeing what Treasure Island looked like. But I spent the morning over there with the Urban Search and Rescue Team, and I'd like to give a shout out to, I hope I get this right, Assistant Deputy Chief Mark Kearney, and his team of wonderful instructors. We had about 30 young Marines and sailors that they were training, and they trained them because we are routinely finding ourselves in the naval services, the Marines and the Navy and the Coast Guard, around the globe in a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief mission. I jokingly tell people we are not all about warheads on foreheads, that we are all about humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. When it comes to that HADR role in the United States, in our homeland, there are 2 things that work to our advantage. One is most of the people all speak the same language, which is always helpful when there's not that language barrier. But secondly, most important to us, which yesterday served as a nice reminder, the federal, the state, the local, the city leaders are preparing and training for, as it's been mentioned, not if, but when. And so for us to fold in to that team, it's a wonderful thing. I will tell you that some of the places we find ourselves around the globe, maybe perhaps not as much prior planning and or the capacity and capability to deal with natural disasters as we would find here in our own, the United States. So it doesn't exonerate or alleviate any of us of the responsibility to continue, but it is reassuring to know that this is a world-class team, that the city and county of San Francisco, the city of Oakland, city of San Jose, the surrounding areas have put together for disaster preparedness. So although we are engaged globally on a tactical level, we remain strategically focused on the national defense and ensuring freedom of the seas. We are a maritime nation, and the naval services is what we have to protect that. As an example, before our relief efforts in Indonesia in 2004, the U.S. had a 70% negative image in that area. After we undertook this, it's just now reversed. We now have a 70% positive image because of what we have brought to the people in that area that without our help and assistance would have taken much longer for them in order to build, remodel, construct, and drill. And while we'd like to say all our efforts have had similar effects, they don't. But that does not mean we will discontinue doing what is right and just. Being in the Maritime Commons reflects the importance we place as a maritime nation on the seas and sea lanes. We are heavily dependent on the seas economically, and our lifelines to Asian and European markets depend upon our success. We'd like to remember the 70-80-90 rule. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. 80% of the world's population lives within about 200 miles of water, and 90% of the world trade is traversed over water. 150 of the 190 countries that belong to the UN are coastal nations. 95% of our own U.S. trade is moved in a maritime fashion. It's moved by the sea. So America truly is a maritime nation, and San Francisco a maritime city. Maintaining our current standing in the world relies on sea power, and sea power is what the Navy Marine Corps team brings day in and day out. Third Fleet is your Navy on the West Coast. Our area of responsibility is from the North Pole to the South Pole, from the West Coast to the international date line. It includes 60,000 sailors, 5 carrier strike groups, roughly 10 amphibious-class ships, which make up 4 ARG-MUs, over close to 400 aircraft, and over 20 submarines, and that's your force. The military makes up 1% of the population, but we like to think of that population as the top 1%. They protect our freedoms, they serve with a sacrifice most will never know, and they have the courage and conviction to put their country before themselves. Our sailors and Marines' consistent commitment and sacrifice is part of what we honor today and this weekend. Like the rest of you, I am awed by this generation's character. Every mission, every task is completed thoroughly. The best of this young generation of 18 and 19-year-olds are taking on immense responsibility and challenges. They steer aircraft, they steer ships, they steer submarines worth billions of dollars, volunteering in overwhelming numbers during a time of war in the Marine Corps and the Navy. Each is a hero, and each is held dear by all of us who wear the uniform. Given that they are a representation of our entire naval force, I would say unequivocally that our nation's future is in very good hands. I want to close by thanking all of you, the community, the city leaders, the city agencies and departments, for your support to our men and women in uniform. It is about building partnerships and relationships. It is about sharing that common bond that all of us in uniform, it doesn't matter if it's the cloth of our nation or the cloth of a state or city that is represented. There is a natural bond that is formed when you identify with each other wearing a uniform that is unlike anything that most people will ever experience. And so I would ask each and every one of you, and we talked about this morning with the sailors and Marines, we greatly appreciate when anyone takes the time out to thank our young sailors and Marines for what they do. And I've not been paid to do this, but I would ask you also, next time you see a policeman or a fireman or anyone that's in uniform for the city or federal or state government, thank them for what they do. For while we are protecting your freedoms, we in the military understand and fully comprehend that they are protecting our loved ones when we're gone. So for me, to all of you, and I mentioned this today to to Chief Joanne Hayes White, thank you for what you do. This week is shaping up, obviously, to be one of the best that we've had. I am proud to say, not because I'm the 3rd Fleet Commander and my counterpart on the East Coast now, let me just say that San Francisco Fleet Week is the largest Fleet Week in the country by the number of ships that are participating. So we have recognized that the climate has changed, and we have been embraced with open arms and in some cases open homes by the city of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. And again, I thank you very much to all of you. Your devotion in promoting the naval services and conducting this Fleet Week and their events are not only admirable, but critical enablers of the Navy's ability to convey to the American public what their Navy is all about. Increasing as of late, much has been written and said about the military's relationship in San Francisco. I'm here to tell you it is a wonderful relationship, and if I weren't already married, I'd marry somebody in San Francisco. But I've been happily married for 35 and a half years, so I'm going to stick with the one I've got. Thank you very much for your support.